So good to have you here at the Oldish. It is a Wednesday, of course, so it's time for our regular Oldish Live. And in this seat next to me, very soon, will be Constable Jamie Stanley, our special guest, who is going to be talking to us today about scams that impact seniors. Until he arrives, though, we're going to go through our regular routine, so stay with us. I'm going to tell you about the articles that we published this week on the Oldish. That is theoldish.com if you want to read any of these, because as always, they are really interesting, and there are always one or two that you go, I should know more about that. Many seniors with dementia are unaware of their diagnosis. A study recently showed that 6 out of 10 seniors in the US were completely unaware that they have dementia. Now, sometimes that's because they are high functioning enough to kind of fly under the radar. Other times there are language barriers. But people who have dementia, as they progress, sometimes before somebody goes, hey, this is really a problem, can be a danger to themselves. Think in terms of taking medications. Think of going out for a drive and getting lost. Think of leaving that pot on the stove. We hear about those things all the time. 6 out of 10 is a very high number of people to be unaware that they have some issues around dementia. And of course, until they are aware, interventions can't successfully be put in place. So that's a problem. Another article, Phase 2 drug trial shows promise for Alzheimer's treatment. Making it to Phase 2 is a good thing, so keep your eye on that. Read that article and you can see what the drug trial is. Now, this one gathered a lot of comment on our Facebook page. Muscle mass deteriorates within first 10 days of bed rest. This is really serious. An Australian study found that muscle mass can deteriorate by up to 30% within the first 10 days. 30% is huge. And of course, a study at Yale University found that this sort of inactivity is also leaving people open to things like increased risk of falls, bed sores, blood clots, and a loss of bone mineral density. All of these things are terribly problematic for the future of the senior because, of course, at some point they're going to be released from hospital. They're going to go home and they're going to think, life as usual. That's not the case. They have to gain back this muscle that they have lost in order to be able to function properly. Or you know what will happen? They will be released from hospital having lost up to 30% of their muscle mass. They're going to be at home alone and they're going to fall. Not because anything else is wrong with them, but because they lost this muscle mass while they were on bed rest at the hospital. This is definitely a case where families need to advocate for their seniors who are on bed rest or who are in the hospital. So now, just before anybody gets too down on hospitals, I'm on a hospital board, and so I see both sides of the equation. Here in Ontario, costs to hospitals, and I'm talking about operating costs, not even replacing capital equipment that is beyond its usable life. I'm talking about operating costs, which includes salaries, keeping the lights on, paying for the food, that kind of thing. These kinds of costs are increasing on an annual basis of at least 5%, very often double that. What the government is giving to the hospitals to operate as an annual increase is 1% or 2%. So you can see that there's a gap there. And this gap very often results in people not being hired. When somebody retires, when there's some kind of attrition, when there is a full-time job that can be taken down to a part-time job, these are the kinds of choices that hospital administration is having to make. Now, I'm not here advocating for hospitals or for anything else. I'm just trying to bring you the other side of the equation. And it really helps for families to be aware of everything that's going on because there certainly are partnerships that are required. People need to get in there and advocate for their loved one who is bedridden, whether it's in the hospital or in the house. What kind of exercises can they do? Am I able to get them up and help them walk? How do I do that? Teach me how, and I will come in every day and do it. Do you have available a bed bicycle? These are the wheels of a bicycle that can be put on a bed, and in a laying down position, you can still pedal the bicycle. There are elastic stretch bands that can be brought in. Now, of course, all of this presumes that the patient is able. So you certainly have to work with the staff to see what the patient is capable of, but advocating for them to move daily, constantly, will absolutely benefit them. Estrogen's role in dementia prevention studied. Well, of course it's being studied. Of course it's being studied, yes. All kinds of hormones have issues that lead to dementia, that have something to do with dementia. So there's an interesting article for you. Now, the next article I'm going to talk to you about is something that I took note of. High-intensity interval walking can boost weight loss. As I have discussed on this show before, I am on my treadmill every morning for 30 minutes. Not because I love it so much, but because if you don't use it, you lose it. And I'm at that age where I've got to keep moving. I do aim for 10,000 steps a day, and doing 30 minutes on the treadmill really helps. But in this article, I learned about high interval intensity training. High intensity interval walking, actually. So here's what it is. A 5-minute warm-up at your normal walking pace. And then you increase the pace to just short of running. And you do that for 30 seconds. And then you back it off and do 4 minutes of walking at a normal pace. And then you increase the intensity again to just below running. 30 seconds, back down for 4 minutes, and repeat until you hit 30 minutes. I've been doing that, and I have to tell you, there's a difference. There is a difference. I'm getting more steps in, and I'm getting more sweat going. It is really a very interesting process. And I see that Jamie Stanley has just arrived, so we can expect him any moment, but this is good timing because I have one more article to tell you about. Beware of healthcare booths offering free services. Now, this is an article that was just published yesterday, and it seems that booths, little information booth type things, are popping up at fairs and senior centers, different places around, and they are purporting to offer free health services. What they're actually doing is gathering personal information from you if you visit them. This is a huge problem, and of course, it's a scam. It's a terrible scam, and I want you to listen very carefully to the things that Constable Jamie tells us today, because hopefully you're going to understand the kind of information that you can and cannot give out safely to people that you don't know. They do not have your best interests at heart. They just don't. So beware of these healthcare booths. You know, if they're offering something for free, nothing is free. Free has no value. You're probably just getting suckered in, so do not visit these people. Now, when Jamie gets here and takes his seat next to us, I'm going to tell you that you can ask questions. If you have any questions as he goes through his presentation or that occur to you as he speaks, put them in the comment box just below this broadcast and we will see them. They will pop up here on the screen and we'll have Jamie answer them in real time. I've already got some. I've got a question that was written on Facebook, and I've got some questions from people that were sent to me in private message. I think because potentially they got caught in something and they're a little bit embarrassed and they don't want to post it publicly. I understand that, certainly. So now I'm not going to tell you that if you private message me during Jamie's presentation, I'm going to get it. I won't get those until after the presentation is over and the broadcast is over, but I will see them on my screen here. So please feel free to enter your questions. And as we wait for him to come in, I will tell you that you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest. We've got a few posts there. If you haven't liked us yet on Facebook, please do give us a like, and that will make sure that our content is fed to you. You may sometimes see an invitation from us if you have commented or liked one of our posts in the past. We will send you an invitation. That's not a scam. We're not gathering information. We're genuinely interested in having you have access to the material we provide. And of course, all of our articles are available free at theoldish.com. Now, when you go there, you will notice that there are, you can read about 3 articles, and then you will be invited to sign on and create an account. The account costs nothing, but the reason for the account being there is because there are tools in the toolkit, which you'll see in the top menu, that require you to enter, if you choose to use them, personal information. Things like a medication checklist, for instance. That's a very good thing, and we've talked about that ad nauseum here, and that's something that you really should be filling out, and you can download it and print it off, but it's none of anybody's business, so we need that little firewall with a password so that that information is available only to you. So let us welcome our guest, Jamie Stanley, who has just walked in. Come on in. This is actually excellent timing. I will get you mic'd up. Hang on, folks, I'll get him mic'd. Sit down. There you go.
Hi.
Perfect. Now there's the camera.
Excellent.
That's where people are seeing you, and I can see you here. But if people have questions and comments,
Okay.
I can see them here.
Fantastic.
So we can ask them of you in real time. And I was just telling them before you came in about an article that we just published on our website yesterday, which had to do with healthcare booths that are popping up purporting to offer free services, but they're actually gathering personal information from people. Have you heard of this, or is this a U.S. thing?
I haven't heard of that locally in Huron County. That's something new, but it's kind of follows the same vein as a lot of the other scams that we see out there, where they're just trying to harvest personal information from individuals. So it's something that I'm not aware of right here locally as of yet.
Okay, so we have viewers and readers from all over the world, and I've been telling them that it really doesn't matter if you don't live in Huron County.
Sure, yes.
That you are with the Ontario Provincial Police.
Yes.
Doesn't really matter, because a scam is a scam is a scam.
Absolutely.
And they are things that come into our homes, they are on our cell phones, they're on our landlines, they're on our internet, Facebook, they're knocking on our front door, and they are out in the community. So I'm going to just hand it over to you and let you warn everybody.
All right, I'll do my best. So.
Okay, and I do have some questions, some things that people have posted, and they may post more in real time.
For sure. So we do know that about 66% of the scams are coming through the internet. Those stats are based on the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. So if you live in Canada, you may be familiar with that, although when I do deliver presentations in the community, a lot of people are just really unfamiliar with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. So that is certainly a resource that our police officers in Ontario and throughout Canada work with. Certainly they collect a lot of the data in relation to the scams. They provide preventative materials. So really when it comes to scams and frauds, this is really about prevention and getting the word out there. So the more knowledge we have on these scams and the more that we can share the information with the public, the better for all of us. So the reality is we'd rather prevent these scams from happening in the first place, because the chances of recouping money and recovering money quite often in these scams is very difficult. So we need to prevent the scams before they even start. That's what we often see. So there's a myriad of different types of scams that we do see. Some of the ones that I know are certainly occurring in Huron County, regionally throughout Ontario, and I'm sure they all throughout Canada and certainly throughout the world. So I did bring a list here today. Maybe we could go through some of the ones that I often see and that I like to remind individuals about. So certainly the prize pitch scam. So whether it comes through a phone call that you've won a cruise, or whether it's a all-inclusive vacation, or an email to your inbox, or a message on your phone, some enticing offers. So this is an amazing offer for that you're the winner, specially selected for this prize. Of course, we would all love to win these prizes, and but the reality is it's often a scam, and they're looking for advance fees. So be very, very careful before you ever send any money. When it comes to the lottery scams, quite often we see victims that receive notification that they've won a foreign lottery. a country they've maybe never ever traveled to in their life. So they have to stop and pause and think for a moment that although it'd be amazing to win $3 million, $90 million, and then they'll entice it and they'll throw in a fancy sports car on top of that. You have to be very, very, you cannot fall for it. It's just one of those scams that we do see, unfortunately, people that they'll send the money out in advance, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to this lottery company expecting this great windfall, and it never comes through. So never send money to someone that you personally do not know and personally do not trust. So
Can I ask, how do they justify that they want you to send this money to begin with? What kind of language are they using to entice people to even send this money?
yeah, it's often the emails that we do see. It's big bold print, very fancy lettering. It's usually coming from a high-ranking official within the organization, whether it's the CAO, CFO, someone with usually the highest ranking individual in the company, so they treat them very specially. And it's interesting, these letters are often filled with a lot of grammatical errors, there's spelling mistakes in there. So those are some sure signs that it is a scam. There's always some sort of urgency involved in the letter or any of these scams. You have to act quickly. It's a limited time opportunity. So they're trying to put pressure on that individual. So cloud their emotions and they're not thinking very clearly. So that is one of the scams that we do see, unfortunately, individuals still falling for. Another one that's very popular that some of you may have heard of is certainly the emergency scam. And we've seen a number of victims all throughout Canada. In fact, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, their statistics indicate that 5% of all scams are related to the grandparent emergency scam.
Right, I've heard of that.
So essentially how this scam works is individuals will receive a call, an urgent call from someone posing to be a family member. And they claim to be in some sort of difficulty. Often it's a case where they've been involved in a collision. So this collision sometimes results in this person being charged for impaired driving. So they've been taken into custody by the police. So they'll receive this frantic call, and then at that point, the phone is usually passed over to somebody else that's working in on the scam, and then they claim to be a lawyer that's working for their grandson or their granddaughter. So immediately, the person that's received the call, they're very concerned about their grandson, their granddaughter, and they're concerned. So and the next step in the scam is this person that pretends to be a lawyer claims that they're working for them and they can get them released from custody. Of course, they don't work for free. They need to have some money sent to them. So usually it's electronically sent or it's sent through one of the money transfer services. So, and there's always a sense of urgency. And we've seen a number of individuals, unfortunately, have been victimized by the scam. And we're talking in the thousands of dollars. So if you ever receive a phone call from a family member that's claimed to have been involved in an emergency, a collision, or there's some other emergency taking place, try to independently verify that with another family member. Get a hold of that person. Don't trust it. They're very skillful and very cunning at what they do. And you may question, well, it doesn't really sound like your grandson or granddaughter, and they'll have a very quick reply that, well, it's because of the medication I've been taking, or it's because of the injuries from the collision. So they're really well rehearsed and orchestrated scams. So you have to be on your guard. Any emergency calls from family members, be very, very skeptical. They're really preying on the good nature of all, most human beings. We want to help our loved ones, and we want to help our neighbors and our families and friends. But just pause and think for a moment, and try to make some calls before you send any money.
And are they using information that they may have previously mined? So they're calling the grandson by name, for instance?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a very good point. So certainly a lot of information can be found in open source information on many social media platforms. Certainly whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, there's a plethora of information out there for individuals, particularly for those that do not secure with their privacy settings. Then they leave it, certainly their social media accounts in a public setting. So depending on an individual's personal preference, certainly we do recommend to understand your privacy settings. Understand that when you leave it in a public fashion, that means anybody in the world can be reading this information. And the reality is there's many scammers out there in the world that will take advantage of that information, and they'll use that when they make that phone call.
For sure.
So that's the grandparent emergency scam. Another one that we often see is certainly is the Microsoft antivirus scam. So very common. I know what's happened to my family members and many of the colleagues around the office. I've received calls personally myself on this particular scam.
I have as well.
And, sometimes the easy quick fix is I don't have a computer and just hang up the phone. And that's certainly what we'd recommend when it comes to if you receive a call from someone that's pretending to work for, one of the major computer software companies and they want to fix a computer. A lot of us have computers that just aren't running up to speed, and it certainly leaves us vulnerable. And it's, they're trying to provide a service to you over the phone that essentially they're going to want to get some private information, certainly your credit card information. So often they will sell you, a product. They'll send it to you in the delivery of an email, and then you'll be asked to click onto a link. When you click onto a link from sources that you don't trust, it certainly can be introducing viruses into your computer, which leads to malware and a whole host of problems. So if you have issues with your computer, take it to a reputable computer shop and have it looked at by a technician that you do trust. Purchasing devices over the phone, certainly that you're opening yourself up to, certainly a potential scam there.
Right.
Moving into another scam, the mystery shopper scam. Mystery shoppers, they do exist. They are, in neighbors, various communities. But if you receive unsolicited offer that they've accepted your application as a mystery shopper, be very cautious. Although it'd be great to go around and shop and rate services and be paid for that, the reality is this is quite likely a scam. So the mystery shopper scam, the way it works is you're asked to go out to your local community and make some purchases and evaluate the services that you received. And then this offer is often accompanied by a fraudulent check, a money order. And I've showed these checks and money orders to people that work in the banking industry, and it can certainly very well pass. The quality of photocopiers and in today's day and age, it will pass. You deposit this check into your account thinking that you have $3,000 or $4,000 to make these purchases, and this is for your payment for your work. However, in 3 or 4 days, when you get notified from the bank that this check did not clear, you're out the money. So that's the way that scam works. So we often see victims losing out $3,000, $4,000 in that range on mystery shopper scam.
In this case, the scammer is not actually making money. They're just getting you to spend your money.
No, they are sending you a fraudulent check. So you believe it's a legitimate check or a money order. You deposit it in your account. And what they ask you to do is send a portion of that money back to them.
Gotcha.
So that's how they make the money. So for instance, we often see these checks and money orders come in around $4,000. So they'll have very detailed instructions. You keep $300 for your pay, $300 to make the purchases, and then the remaining $3,400, they've overpaid you. So now you have to send that money back.
Gotcha.
So you send it from your account, and unfortunately, 3 or 4 days pass, the check doesn't clear, you're out that money. And they always put some interesting little twists in the letter. For instance, you're a probationary employee, so we're judging your ability to work as your performance as an employee on how quickly you can get this job done. Please keep this discreet, don't tell other people. So of course, the more people you tell, then this scam can be uncovered. So they want you to act quickly and get the job done. Unfortunately, when we rush out the door to make these purchases, we're not just thinking clearly enough.
Right.
Another scam that we do see that's affected a number of people is online and vacation cottage rentals. So that is certainly, if you're in the business of shopping for, looking for places to stay, we use the internet, and of course there's, it's very commonplace for people to go online and find vacation places, but be very careful before you send money. It's happened to some of the colleagues that I work with, other police officers, other people in the community where they've been online, they've found a vacation spot, and it looks really beautiful. The pictures are great. All the write-ups are excellent. But at the end of the day, then they'll send money electronically. So if you're sending money from your account to individual's account, the ability to get your money back is going to be really diminished. So we would recommend, certainly, if you're sending a deposit or paying for a transaction, using your credit card. The credit card companies out there are very good at, if you run into issues with scams and you've fallen victim, certainly having your money, there's some insurance there. So also using a reputable travel company is recommended as well. So just don't, and these ads can be very enticing. They're usually they're priced under market. They get your attention. And at the end of the day, you have to be very careful. Do your due diligence, talk to family members, friends that have traveled to these places before you rent and send money.
Now, would something like Airbnb fall into this? They seem to vet their people pretty
Yes.
well. Or are you talking about just hey, I've got a cottage for rent on this lake?
It could fall into that. Certainly, any type of online posting, classified ads, individuals I've known have actually, some countries, in some of the island nations, they've been affiliated with their government official travel and tourism bureaus. So,
oh, wow.
in these cases, individuals have sent deposits upwards of $1,000, $2,000, and then they've, fortunately for them, before they've landed in the country, they figured it out as a scam before they arrived. So,
okay.
Be careful about that one. Another one that I think we should talk about certainly is the romance and online dating scams.
I had a question about that. Actually.
Interesting.
A private message from somebody.
Okay.
Words or phrases that should trigger someone to look out for this. I think that was somebody who maybe got caught.
Well, and the reality is this is probably one of the number one scams that we're seeing right now in Canada. There was over $17 million in losses reported by the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre last year. And the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre estimates that they're only capturing about 5% of the actual losses out there. So
wow.
Those numbers are staggering.
Very small.
And locally, I've seen individuals lose their entire life savings to this particular scam. So for those that aren't familiar with this scam, a lot of people go on and they meet some amazing people online. And there's some very reputable dating sites out there. And then there's other places that aren't so reputable. If you meet people online, just understand that sometimes these people are in it for the wrong reasons. They're not there to meet you for companionship or for romantic encounters. They're there for the sole purpose of trying to trick you into getting money from you. So you need to understand people can easily create fake profiles, and they will say all kinds of amazing things about themselves, that they're very successful, their appearance, they work out and they're in great shape and they have, everything you may be looking for in a partner. Unfortunately, these are so often what we see fake profiles. And the reality is these relationships online move very, very quickly. And this is simply a numbers game for these scammers, and they send out all kinds of emails and contacts. And the reality is it's been very successful and it continues to work. And it's very, very unfortunate to see, particularly with those that are, in a vulnerable situation. They've been in a long-term relationship and they've been recently, a separation or the loss of a loved one. And, their individuals are sometimes looking for companionship, and individuals prey on those vulnerabilities. And that's quite often what we see. And sometimes we're really quick to judge others. How could this person fall for this scam? Right. I don't see, there were so many warning signs. Why did they do that? But the reality is, in many cases, these individuals are preying on vulnerable people.
They're actually grooming them.
Absolutely. And we've seen individuals lose their entire life savings. So it's very, very unfortunate. And so be very careful about exchanging personal information with those that you meet online. Be very guarded in sending information such as social insurance numbers, credit card numbers, banking information. As much as you think this person loves you and is, an amazing catch, so to speak, just be very, very careful, particularly if they're asking money from you for family emergencies, whether it be, they've run into difficulties traveling between countries. They've been arrested by immigration. They don't have access to their funds. I promise to pay you back. Or, I've been rewarded, $500,000. I work for the U.S. Armed Forces. We've seen a number of those investigations where, they're trying to buy your trust. Maybe they pretend to be a police officer or someone that works in the armed forces. A successful lawyer, a businessman, a doctor. And unfortunately, people sometimes their emotions clouded, and they will send the money without thinking, and there's always a promise that this money will be paid back, and they'll maybe move to wherever you are to live with you, and create a beautiful life together. And fortunately, it's a dream that just doesn't come true often enough.
Right. We've talked on the show oftentimes, and in our articles that we published on the Oldish, about social isolation.
Yes.
And how devastating it is. And it's actually been called the #1 health risk of our time.
Interesting.
And I imagine that you are seeing a lot of people who are very isolated, who have this dream. And they want the romance more than they don't want to part with a little bit of money to start with, but it doesn't stop.
That's right. And it really is sad to see that. And we've seen cases where individuals, they just don't have that money in their account, and they're going to their lines of credit to help people out. And for people that we've had individuals that have shown up at airports waiting for this this person they've been communicating with for a few months to arrive, and not only they're missing $6,000 or $8,000 or $10,000, but they're crushed. Some that they've believed in, some that they maybe had this future thought that they would, raise a family together. And it certainly, we do find it's targeted to those that are, the senior population, but we've seen younger individuals as well, those in their 20s and 30s as well, been hit with this particular scam. So it's certainly, it's very prevalent, and it's something that everybody needs to be aware of. So be very careful before you send any money to particularly strangers.
You hear that? Don't let your heart rule your head.
Yeah, very good advice. Absolutely. Another scam that we may talk about here, I know certainly in Canada, the Canada Revenue Agency scam. So
right.
This is a very popular one. Certainly it peaks around tax time, but we see it throughout the year. And essentially what it is you get a call from someone purporting to work for the Canada Revenue Agency, a tax collector, if you will. And these calls are often very threatening in nature. And I've received them myself, and I've talked to lots of adults that have come into our office, and they have just received this call. They're very scared, and they're still trembling because often there's threats that they'll be deported from Canada, or they're going to put a lien on your property, or that you'll be arrested. And that's very terrifying. Most of the people that, are law-abiding citizens that have no negative encounters with police, they're terrified when they hear the words being arrested and charged. And they're good, honest citizens. And they're preying on these fears. So these scammers, they will threaten individuals, and they'll say, we did a review on your income tax, and you owe 3 or 4 or X number of thousands of dollars, and you need to pay it immediately. They always put this time pressure on you. And it's really interesting what we're seeing recently. A lot of these transfers aren't always in the case of electronic money transfers. Now we're talking about they want you to go out and purchase gift cards. So a lot of people will be familiar with iTunes gift cards. So that holds a certain amount of value. So they're asking individuals to go to stores that sell gift cards and purchase $3,000, $4,000 worth of gift cards. And then essentially they supply the authorization codes on the back of the gift cards to the scammers, and that is certainly value for them. And then they will then in turn sell it at a reduced rate on the black market. So gift cards that we often see associated with this particular scam would be iTunes gift cards. And another one recently is gaming gift cards. Of course, there's millions and millions of individuals that are involved in online gaming, so they can sell these products easily on the black market, so it commands value. So individuals need to be aware that the Canada Revenue Agency is not accepting any sort of forms of payment in gift cards, whether it be for big box stores or online, iTunes gift cards. So
are they taking Bitcoin?
No, they're not as of yet. But leading into that, that's interesting. You ask about Bitcoin, but you mentioned Bitcoin. We've had a recent scam just in the last week. I actually sent out a media release about this particular scam yesterday. And this particular scam is also preying on the fears and emotions of individuals as well. This particular scam involves individuals will get an email or a notification from an unknown source, and essentially in the email, the text of the email will say, we've caught you watching pornography.
I've had one of those emails. Actually, I've had more than one.
So that particular scam, they're also saying, we have video evidence of you watching this pornography. And I've seen the emails, and so individuals commonly don't want to, share that they've been watching pornography or what they do in their private lives. So they will prey on that, and they'll say, well, unless you want this to go public, you need to pay us $3,000-4,000, and it's often this transfer is in Bitcoin. So
Okay.
individuals have paid this. So you have to be very, very careful with that. Certainly introducing emails and certain spam into your computer, malware. We've seen individuals received emails purporting to be from CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the RCMP. We're monitoring your IP address. Then you've been searching out child pornography websites. Individuals have not been doing this, but they're very scared, and they believe that it's a legitimate email, and they want to pay the money. So, of course, if you've did nothing illegal, you have nothing to worry about. Report those calls to your local police service.
Really, if you get a call like that, you should be reporting it.
You should.
Or an email?
Yes,
Really?
you
Okay,
should.
okay.
Absolutely.
Good to know.
Let us know about it. It might not be an instance, even if you haven't sent money and you're out any money, it's always good to let your local police service know about it. Particularly their media relations officers can let other people in the community know about it. So myself personally, in Huron County, I'm the community safety officer. There's a number of presentations that I deliver to seniors groups and all kinds of groups throughout the community, and media releases where it's really about prevention and
Right.
awareness. So please let us know about it. There's always different twists to these scams, some that I may not be aware of. So let us know. Alternatively, you can also let the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center know as well. They collect this data, and they'll develop packages for our police officers throughout the community, and they actually have volunteers in the community that will deliver these education programs as well, which is
Okay.
really fantastic. Yeah.
That's good. Well, I suppose if you have the opportunity to send out a media release, it can take the anxiety level down.
Absolutely.
People can really consider the fact that this isn't really something that they have done or that they're being set up for.
Absolutely, and then individuals would be willing to come in and talk about this. They know it's a scam, so
Sure.
that is one that certainly. And there's a whole host of reasons why people do not report to police, and whether it be fear of embarrassment. But the reality is, these scammers are very good at what they do. We need to stay one step ahead of them. And don't ever feel sort of embarrassed about it or ashamed about it. There's many, many victims about there, and it's happened to those that are very, very highly educated, university graduates, people that hold PhDs, in all walks of life. So it can happen to any one of us, and I've seen it happen. So please let us know about it. We may not be able to get your money back. We will try the best we can, but at least at the bare minimum, we can let other people know in the community to prevent it from happening from someone else.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a few other scams. Certainly, if we have some other time, if you're still
we
here
do.
listening to us.
Well, this is archived on the Facebook page,
Okay.
so we do find that over the course of 2 and 3 days, the viewership is really
Okay.
very good. And so if we get questions after that time, perhaps I can send them along
Absolutely.
to you. And you can answer, and I'll respond on Facebook.
I would
And
love to do that.
Tina is letting us know that she's here. Hi, Tina.
Hi, Tina. Excellent. So certainly, the service-related scams, door-to-door sales, they still do exist. Although in Ontario, there's recent legislation that came in March of this year that will certainly help with that. So individuals coming to your door to sell you, whether it be a hot water tank or air purifiers, that kind of stuff. That's very commonplace. Although moving forward, as of March, it should be reduced. But the reality is that if you have individuals coming to your door to sell you products, they sometimes can be very, very pushy. Once you allow them into your residence, it can be very difficult to get them out of your residence. So before you let somebody in, really consider what they're selling you. If you're not interested, politely decline and ask them to leave. If they remain on your property, at that point, say, I'm going to call the police. They are now trespassing on your property, and you have the right to ask somebody to leave your property, of course. So when it comes to individuals that are selling you products, it's always best to get references, check out your Better Business bureaus, speak with other people that have, former customers. What kind of product is it? How do they stand behind their customer service? That kind of stuff. Very, very important. Don't feel pressured into making a deal on the spot. Reputable companies will give you that time you need to research that product or that service that you're purchasing. If you ever sign an agreement, at least in Ontario, there's a 10-day cooling off period for most products. So if you have second thoughts about it, if you wished you didn't do it, you have regrets about that purchase, certainly contact the company within that 10 days and you should be able to get out of that contract. So.
Okay, and if you're in other provinces or other countries, check with your local authorities about what the cooling off period might be. The Better
Absolutely.
Business Bureau would probably
Yes,
know of
they
that sort of
could.
thing.
Consumer protection agencies and various, certainly throughout Canada, throughout Ontario, the different provinces will have different legislation. In Ontario, it's a 10-day period. So.
Right.
And certainly when it comes to, there's a lot of reputable companies out there that will sell their products that way. But there are other companies that are not so reputable. Also, we have canvassers that are soliciting funds for in your community. And I know in my own neighborhood, there's some wonderful individuals that work for, that volunteer their time, whether it be the Heart and Stroke Foundation or the Cancer Society. And I know who those individuals are.
Right,
And
they're your neighbors.
They're our neighbors for the most part.
Right.
And I trust them. And they know about the organization that they're soliciting for. And I'm comfortable handing them 10 or 20 bucks or whatever dollar value at the door. But if someone comes to your door and they're looking for a handout for a particular charity, they should at least know something about the charity. They should have some identification. They should have the registered charitable number for that organization. Quite often they'll have some sort of literature that they can leave with you, and they're not going to pressure you into a donation. So be very careful before you hand that money over. So, but there's a lot of amazing organizations that do rely on those funds. And just be careful because there's some other individuals, usually what we find locally, it's private individuals that are just going out looking for handouts and from individuals purporting to work for these organizations. So be careful about that one.
What about the people that show up at your door saying, show me your gas bill, I want to make sure you're getting the best deal on your delivery?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the new legislation may affect these organizations, whether they can carry out their business. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure if that's going to restrict their ability to do that. It may very well be. If you let somebody in, certainly entering into a contract like that at a reduced rate for, whether it be propane, natural gas, do your due diligence. It might look like an enticing offer in the immediate, but 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you might be paying at a very high price. So I know certainly when it comes to hot water tanks, looking to switch them out, and you have to be very careful. So I would call your current provider first and find out. And if you have any questions, get the name first. Do your own search online. Simply by punching that name of that company into Google, you can find out a lot about companies. Call the local police service. See if we've had other complaints. Call your Better Business Bureaus. And before you sign into a contract and sign the deal, do your homework.
And probably it's a good idea not to show them your bill because they can get personal information from that.
Absolutely. So allowing people into your home or into your space can be certainly dangerous, particularly. But when you're providing personal information, social insurance number, never supply that to individuals. Credit card information, never supply that to individuals you do not know. Only reputable companies.
Right.
So those are some of the scams that at least we're seeing here in Ontario. There's other scams that, certainly the bulk of our scams are trending right now online. So be very careful of those phishing scams that are trying to trick you into believing that you're on a legitimate website. So essentially, they're trying to get your login information. So be very, very careful about that when you log into whatever bank you bank with online banking. Passwords, you need to protect them. Do not keep one password for all of your logins. So
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes, actually, the most common password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Followed by password. So
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Use lots of different numbers and symbols. One computer expert that I trust very well, he gave me some advice when it comes to passwords to share is write them down in a book on a piece of paper, hide them in a book. If a criminal breaks into your house, they're not looking to steal your books. So, and change your passwords up regularly. And there are applications and there's software out there that can manage your passwords as well.
Right.
So I don't use that myself, but maybe in the future that might be something I'll have to use myself. But
Sure. Let's take a look and see if our questions have been covered. One person had asked about the free stuff on social media posts, iPads, motorhomes, gift certificates. I think you covered that. The dating sites, phone calls that try to get you to say yes. That's a new one where even just when you answer the phone, they're trying to get you to say yes. I don't fully understand it, but it has something to do with they're going to call back later and say that you said yes to this. Is that?
Yes, they've got your voice recording, so it's another way to trick you. So that they'll pose some sort of question and they'll record it, and then they'll use that at a later point in time to call you back to say, no, you've agreed to this. So now they trick you into believing that you've entered into some sort of contract with them. So at that point, you feel committed that you have to pay the funds. So essentially, that's how that particular scam works. We haven't had a lot of complaints on that particular scam. But speaking about phone calls, we do see a lot of scammers and individuals that are spoofing phone numbers. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that for those that aren't. So if you have a caller ID phone at home, you may see the phone number coming in, and it might be a local number, a local extension. So your guard might go down. And sometimes you might even see, how is my own phone number calling me?
I've had that happen before I got rid of my home phone.
So your number has been spoofed.
Right.
So for some reason or another, somebody has they've used a computer application, they've put your number into some sort of device. I don't know the technical way it works, but essentially it shows up on your caller ID as a number that might be local or might be your own number. So in what we've seen actually locally, actually right here in Exeter, where we're broadcasting from, we've had a recent victim that it came up on their caller ID, and it was the local Exeter OPP detachment. So
Yes.
they thought, well, this could be the police calling. And this one went back to the CRA scam. And they were claiming that they're a police officer and they owed money and this kind of stuff. So just be very careful about that, because it's a number that you recognize. It might not necessarily be. So be careful about callers spoofing your number as well.
Right, and I know I have an iPhone. I don't pretend to know about Android phones, but the number does show up and you can block them from calling
Yes.
you back again, which doesn't mean that they don't have 100 others that they just cycle through. But
That's true. So those numbers, those emails that do come in where you've had, it's associated with scammers, please let us know, report it to the police. We then in turn, we will forward those phone numbers, those email addresses onto the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, and then they have individuals that will help, they'll take those numbers off the system. So, which is good. A lot of these scams and frauds, it's all related to organized crime, so we need to do what we can to kind of counteract that, and that's one of the measures that we can take to disrupt their organization.
right, great. Okay, well, I think we got all the questions asked that have been sent in before, and people are here, but they don't seem to have questions.
Okay,
So
no
we'll,
problem.
We'll call it a day, and you can certainly watch this broadcast. It will be archived, and I can break up little snippets and show them to you guys on a regular basis so that you don't forget, because scams are very dangerous for aging seniors. Seniors are very, very vulnerable people, and we want to make sure that they stay well protected. And sometimes things happen, and then they get embarrassed that something has happened, and rather than being able to solve the problem, somehow it gets worse.
Yeah, absolutely, and we need to look out for our friends and family, and our certainly those in our senior population that, as you mentioned earlier, are often very sometimes isolated. So check in with them, share with them this information, and we have some seniors that are very knowledgeable using different applications and using computers, and there are others that don't. So this is we need to help them out and support them. So
Right.
it's do what we can, check in on them, let them know about these scams that are taking place in our community.
Right.
So.
Well, thank you very much for coming in today and
You're
sharing this
welcome.
information. I hope that you have all found that useful and that you'll all be on your guard. And until next Wednesday at 12 noon, please do remember that it takes a village to age a senior.